All right, I am here with Rachel Reel. Hello,
Good
Rachel.
good morning. How are you?
Great. So Rachel is the broker owner of her real estate company in the western suburbs of Chicago,
Western
Illinois.
suburbs of Chicago, yes.
Excellent. So we
And I say
wanted to,
that without my best Chicago accent.
yeah, no, you can still, I can like see the hot
You
dog
can
in
hear
your
it a little bit.
yeah, as you're like saying it,
Right,
but
I try.
or stuffed pizza. I don't, yeah,
Right,
Chicago.
yes.
I love Chicago.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
is good.
so we are bringing you on because you are one of our favorite brokers, and we've gotten to a big fight about the inspection. And do you deliver the full inspection report or pieces of it? And I can see you, and you're making this this smile.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like you're about to deliver me a smackdown.
A big
So
old
let's hear
smackdown.
it.
Yeah. So I have to go with Monica on this one, and I know it's going to
What?
break your heart. I know, I'm very sorry. Um, so let me preface this by saying in the state of Illinois, it is a contract violation to send any part of the inspection report, either in part or in full, to the seller side.
What? What
It's
do you
in
mean?
it's in giant bold letters. Do not send this report unless you are asked by the seller's attorney.
Oh,
So
you're
buyer
an
pays for it.
attorney state.
We are an attorney state.
Oh God,
So
that's
it's a
so
it's a
much.
violation of the contract. Uh-huh.
Wow. So what
Yes.
happened?
So if you send it, you're in breach of contract, and the attorney is going to typically those reports would be sent from the buyer's attorney to the seller's attorney. You know, if that was going to happen, that's the avenue it would take. So if my seller's attorney receives the inspection report without being asked, he returns the email and says, "This was sent to me. I'm not opening it. It's a violation of the contract for you to send that to me."
So if you're okay, so you're the buyer agent,
I'm the buyer's agent,
and they
right?
also have an attorney.
Correct.
They're making it way too hard to buy a
You
house.
know, I would tend to agree with you, yes.
We're definitely need to blow all of this up. But
It's challenging because even if you go outside of Chicago, out further west to like Rockford, which is
mhm.
halfway to Iowa, there's no attorneys.
Huh.
So
Okay.
it's very bizarre. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
so the buyer does pay for their own inspection there, right?
Buyer pays for the inspection, does
Okay.
the inspection, and owns the inspection. Yeah.
So
They
then
even have to sign off whether or not they want to forward it to me as their agent.
who if they want to make like who do they talk to, like in our state in Ohio and in Kentucky, like the buyers will get the report and then I will also get the report and then we like
Right.
kind of just like discuss it, like what do you want to ask for,
Exactly.
what's reasonable, so you do
Exactly.
that with them, not the attorney?
We Correct. Yes, we deal with
Okay.
all of that, and then I'll usually go over that with the client, put a list together for the attorney, draft an email, and send it to my client and say, "How does this look based on our conversation?" And then if
Okay.
they say, "Hey, it's all good," I send it to the attorney, who then forwards it to the seller's attorney and says, "Hey, this is what they're asking for."
So the attorney, it's just like a list of, but like so
There's
many
there's
times.
right. There's modifications that both attorneys make to the contract outside of inspection issues. So they'll make modifications to the
Like
contract
what type?
to better, if the property doesn't appraise for the contract price, they have the ability to cancel the contract
But
or
isn't that
renegotiate
already
the
in the
price.
contract?
No,
Oh, see, it's in our contract. If they're always
right.
making that request, why doesn't it just go in the contract?
It's funny. Every time a new contract version comes out, the attorneys look at it and they go, "Okay, here's my list of standard modifications I'm going to make." It's our contract is 13 pages, and every
What?
version is another page longer. I mean, we're killing trees left and
I
right over
bet
here.
you like the California one is like
800
27
pages.
pages.
Right? Yes, yes,
That's insane. Okay, so like,
yeah.
have you ever worked in a state where, have you worked in any other state as a realtor?
No, no.
I wonder I need to have another broker on where it's not an attorney state. And I wonder if all attorney states are like that. So like if the
You know,
seller,
even if we weren't an attorney state,
mhm,
take that out of it. If you're looking at strictly your fiduciary duty to the client,
yeah,
if I'm representing a buyer,
mhm,
I'm preparing them ahead of time, saying you're asking only for health and safety concerns. That is it. Don't ask for them to give you a credit for carpet. Don't ask them about caulking the bathtub. Don't
right,
ask them about anything you've seen when you go through the house.
right,
So when we'll go through a house, we look at windows. Does it have a broken seal? Does it look ugly? That kind of stuff.
okay,
Don't come in later and ask for all new windows when you saw them when you walked through the entire house. I just had someone do that. Ask
got
for
it.
an entire house, full house of windows. Absolutely
Wow,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that was my seller that they the buyer asked for
See,
that
we
information.
don't really like check for, I mean, you can sometimes, obviously you can like tell, but like
Right, yeah.
the
Things
inspector,
that are obvious,
yeah,
things that an inspector would find that aren't visible to the naked eye, or things that you would have to take the electrical panel off. So you see double tap wires and things, but those would fall under a health and safety concern.
got it.
Anything that falls under the electrical category, I tell them, you can always ask for that. Ask for
Yeah,
electrical all day long.
yeah.
Sometimes they'll ask for things like plumbing, but
Hmm.
that's not necessarily a health and safety, but really, do you want this leak to continue for the next 60 days? And now you're not going to have the same property you have right now.
Right, exactly.
So
That
some
makes
things
sense.
are a little more common sense, but, I was out with a buyer the other day who said, well, this hole the size of a pea that's in the sliding screen door, well, that's a safety concern, because what if a mosquito comes through and bites me and has West Nile? I'm like, no, no.
But what if it rains on Wednesday, Rachel?
Right, right. And that mosquito comes in and now it bites him in the rear and now he has West Nile.
Right.
I mean, this is why I'm ready for this year to be over. But yeah, I mean, health and safety concerns. Other than that, don't ask for it.
Okay.
In this market too that we're experiencing now, it's a full seller's market.
Yeah.
If you're the buyer and you've got the place under contract, don't screw it up, because they're going to go to buyer number 2, 3, 4, and 5 and
Right.
sell it to them all day long.
Right.
Do you want it or do you not?
Right.
So you've got to be a little flexible.
So you
So
actually
I try
aren't
and
even
spend that
on,
time to.
you're not Team Monica either, because you're not even saying like send the partial report. You're saying like don't send it at all unless.
If the seller needs explanation as to what it is that they need repaired. So typically when I prepare that list to send over to the seller side, it's here's the list and here's a screenshot. I just do a screenshot of that particular section of the report, not even the
Girl,
whole
this
page.
is too much work.
I know. And then prepare that and send that over. And then
Gosh,
he'll
how
usually
many
just take it
admin
and send it
skills?
off.
You got to know like Word at least
Oh,
97
no.
in order to do this stuff.
Right, no. Word 97. Just a screen grab and I throw it in an email. It's really not all that bad.
It sounds awful. I can barely turn on the computer.
But that's usually enough. Typically
Okay.
they'll say you have a double tap breaker. Well, if the electrician pulls the panel off and can't tell what the double tap breaker is, we have a bigger problem.
Right, need a new electrician.
They should know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there's only been a couple of times where they've said, hey, we need a little bit more information as to
And
what
then
it is
like
you're
what
talking about.
happens then? Does the attorney for the buyer have to get written permission from the buyer to deliver like those pages of the
No,
report? No. Okay.
no. Typically, the seller side will say, "Hey, we need more information on this request. Can you forward over more information?" And then I'll talk to the buyer, say, "Hey, they're asking for more detail." They're like, "Fine, just send it." From the
How
seller
long are
side, if I'm the listing agent, I don't want to see any of that, because now I have possibly a duty to disclose. But again, that then goes back to, is the inspector worth his work worth the contract it's written on?
Yeah,
A
and
lot of
that's
them
the
aren't.
other thing we were going to talk about. So like how do you
Yeah.
decide, and what is the duty in Illinois of disclosure? Like
Right. I had one property a couple of years ago where the first buyer did an inspection, came back and said there's a serious structural problem. This is where it is, blah, blah, blah. And I look at the buyer, they asked for a $20,000 credit.
whoa.
I look at the seller, I look at the seller and I go, listen, we have a backup offer for 20 grand more. This is our excuse and our reason to be able to say, see you later.
Yeah.
So we canceled with the first buyer, and that agent said, hey, you know what? This is going to come up on every single report. And me and the sellers went through the house, and I said, I, for the life of me, can't figure out where they're coming up with this information. There was nothing.
But is that enough? Like you're not I mean, you're a realtor, right? Like you're not a
Right.
contractor, you're not an inspector,
No.
you're not a.
No, but enough to know that, you see structural issues all the time, and there was nothing in this house that said structural at all. So we thought, even then, do we take the offer 20 grand higher? And if it comes back again, then we drop it 20 grand. We're in the same place we are now.
But you don't
We were
have to
willing to roll the dice.
disclose that they found that because you guys believed it wasn't true?
No, because it's the next contract that came in, we said, we're willing to roll the dice on that. It's okay.
Okay.
So we talked to the attorney. They said, you don't have any duty to disclose that. They're not a structural engineer. They're an inspector.
They're not either, right? Yeah, but they're also
They're
not
not.
like an electrician. They're not a.
They're not any of those things. And
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've said to the inspector, to the buyer, I'm going to take a picture of this for my inspector or for my electrician,
Yeah.
and I'll text it to him right from the house
Yeah.
and say, here's the panel, here's what they're talking about. He goes, the inspector's full of crap. You can
But
do that.
then do you have to get that in writing, or is it just like don't have to disclose it at that point?
If I needed it, I would have it in a text message.
I like
So
how
no
the
big
dog's
deal.
on the podcast. What's his name?
This is Cooper. The garbage truck just went by, so
Hi,
it's very
Cooper.
exciting.
What do you think?
Right. What do you think?
He said
So
BS.
in that particular situation, that second buyer came through, not a one thing, not even an utter of a whisper about an inspection issue or a structural issue, and we went forward and closed.
So I guess there's probably, I imagine that there are times when you're looking at the report and you're like, maybe there's something to this. And then are you, as the seller, the agent and the seller, then like required to then
Right.
get it
What's our
further?
duty? Right. I usually talk to the attorney and say, hey, what's your thought on this?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, hey, they're an inspector. They're going to refer, that section of the paragraph
Yeah,
says we refer to a licensed electrician, refer to a licensed plumber.
yeah.
Fortunately, I've got a great electrician and a great plumber, and I can take a picture right there and text it to both of them, and they'll
Right.
get back to me right away and say, not an issue.
Or
yeah,
issue,
it's a problem.
or you'll
Right. Here's
whatever.
about how much it's going to cost.
Right.
And then I'm sitting there at the inspection with the buyer saying, well, here's the plumber. He says it'll be about $500.
Or if the deal goes down, now you're disclosing it with the paperwork, or I fixed it, or whatever, right?
Exactly. That's all if I'm on the buy
But
side.
what if, have you ever had a case where your seller looked at the
Mhm.
report and was like, they don't know what they're talking about, but you're like, they
Oh,
might.
all the time. Even if I tell a seller, here's the things they've asked for, I have never had a seller not get offended about a single request
Yeah,
because their house is perfect.
of course it's perfect.
So it's
And this is like a
perfect.
throwback to the other, I don't know if, I forget who was on that podcast, but the one about like, what if your client's being a dick? You know what I mean? And like, this is like
Absolutely.
the time, it's like they're being a total jerk. And I think in
Right.
that case, we said they take the fridge from the basement, they take the stainless steel fridge in the kitchen with
and bring
them,
up the shitty
and
fridge,
they
the
bring
beer
up the
fridge in
one
the
from the
basement.
garage or the basement, right?
Right.
So like this could be the same thing. It's like, okay, so they're looking at the report, there's an obvious like, maybe they had shelving in the basement that you didn't see when you walked through, but like after it was all
Right.
cleared out, right? Like now there's like an obvious crack, and they're like, there's no crack, there's no water, and you're like,
Right.
we need to get,
Right.
like what happens?
I had clients years ago that bought a townhome that there was a storage room in a basement,
Yeah,
and the sellers moved everything out. And of course, when you do the inspection, it's walls of shelving and all their Rubbermaid tubs and all their stuff.
right.
They move out. We do the walkthrough. It's covered in mold
Oh,
because nothing had been breathing for how many years, and
Oh
it was
my
there was obviously moisture behind the wall.
oh,
So we ended up doing the final walkthrough, taking pictures, sending them to the attorney, and we said, hey, this is what we found on the walkthrough. We're going to have to negotiate something to credit
yeah,
these
to
buyers
mitigate
for
this.
this. Right. So I
Right.
think they ended up with, $2,000 or whatever it was at the closing, had to fill a crack into the foundation and then tear off drywall and re-insulate and all that.
But like, what if the listing agent was like, or what if the seller was like, no, we'll take care of it. And your clients were like, no, I don't want to buy this house.
Right. Well, if that happened right before closing, nobody's going to kill the deal over that. That seller's attorney is going to say, listen, are you really going to walk away? You're going to have to fix this anyway.
Yeah, but like,
Knock
what
them
if
off the ledge.
I don't know.
Right.
The duty to disclose is like it seems like a dicey situation.
Right. And if
Because
I talk to my attorney about it,
don't really know.
that don't really know.
And you have like a seller who's like, it's perfect, nothing's wrong with my house. I've lived with it like this for 40 years.
Exactly. Every one of them. Well, I've lived with it like that. I'm like, well, great. I'm glad it didn't catch on fire for you. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
And then you have the
It's an
buyer
electrical
that's
problem.
like, I want a brand new house for no money.
Thank you. Yes, all day long. Why I want 2020 to be over.
That's happened before. This has always
It does.
happened.
This year is just even more special.
But it's actually like the benefit of being in real estate. The buyers and sellers have come up with nothing new. There's only
they haven't.
There's only like 12 objections, and they always have the same point of view.
Right. And my house is perfect. And this is how I live with it. Like, that's great. And you know what? 99.9% of the time,
It's
me
fine.
and the attorney will say, just give them a credit. Don't do the repair.
Yeah.
Give them a credit in lieu of repair so they can do it the way they want
on
to.
that.
Give them a credit. Do not touch this house.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do it as cheap as humanly possible. I don't say that to them, but they're going to do it cheap as hell. And the buyer's going to want, the Taj Mahal of repairs.
Right. It's not
Let them
worth
do it on their own. No,
Yeah.
let them do it on their own.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, that's helpful. I can see how I could see how attorneys can be helpful in like cases like this, as long as you guys are on the same side. But who hires the
Right.
attorney? Are they an attorney you've worked with before, or is it the seller hires them?
A little of both. And I will tell you right now, it always goes smoother when it's somebody that I've worked with in the past and that I know how they
Right.
work.
Right.
So there's some attorneys that I know how they work. Like right now, I have a client who has his own attorney, and the client wants an answer 30 seconds before he asks the question.
Right. He sounds like a salesperson.
Right. And his attorney takes 2 days to get back to him on anything.
Wow.
That's not helpful.
No.
I'd rather give him my attorney who answers my emails 30 seconds before I hit send. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do you ever sleep? I mean, I don't know what you're doing over there, but you're not sleeping. So that would have been a perfect match, because
Yeah.
he would ask a question, he'd get an answer in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Not blow up my phone for 2 days saying, well, I don't have this letter. Why don't I have this letter? Why don't I have this?
You like call your attorney. I
You've
don't
got to
know.
call your attorney. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't my turn to watch him.
Right, exactly. Yes. That's where it gets to be challenging. You
Mhm.
know, I've got some attorneys that are excellent with first-time buyers. And so I usually will say, hey, I really like her for first-time buyers.
Yeah.
I really like, if they don't need a lot of hand holding, I have another attorney who is short and to the point, but I love him to death, and he does all my own personal stuff.
Yeah. Nice.
I don't need any hand holding. Here,
No.
Tom, take it.
And
Run.
you're fast.
Right.
Right. That makes
So
sense.
it's like a matchmaking process. Same with lender too.
Yeah,
Got
lender
one lender that I
and
love
title.
for first time. Right. I got one guy that I can call and he'll give me a pre-approval in 3.2 minutes.
Right. That's great.
You know.
Yeah.
Right. So it all depends. It's a little bit of matchmaking if they don't have their own.
Well, awesome. Even though I'm very sad that you don't agree with me, yours is more of like a legal disagreement and not like
Right,
an
exactly,
ethical
yes.
disagreement. Yeah.
Right.
So
No.
I'll let you slide on this one, Rachel.
Okay, good.
As always, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Have a good
Always
one.
a good time. You too.
Yeah.